Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com again, and yesterday, I don't know what happened, I did a video comparing the three decks created by Brian Williams: the Renaissance, the PoMo, and the Minchiate. And somewhere in that somewhere along the lines of those video, immediately after I did the Triumph or the Trump cards, it completely skipped the suits of Swords and Batons and went right to the suit of Cups and Coins. I don't know how that happened. It could have been operator error, which is, possible, completely possible. But after I reviewed the video, I was like, what the hell happened to the two suits? So as promised, I mentioned that in the info section that I would just do, the suits of Swords and Batons for those three decks. So hopefully I'll flip this camera properly. There won't be any more glitches and I'll be able to do a comparison and commentary. So give me a sec. And I think it's important to show this sequence of cards because, especially if you're going for decks that are out of print. Certainly Brian Williams is deceased, and he's been deceased, for a number of years. He died, I believe, in 1999. So the decks might not be that easy to get a hold of, and if you do, they might be expensive, depending on who's selling it, of course. So I think it's important to show, especially the PoMo, for the reasons I discussed in the segment of the video that was deleted or didn't record for whatever reason. So for the suit of Swords in the Renaissance, we have a reasonably standard image. There's some embellishment. It's meant to mimic a Renaissance style, although it's more Art Nouveau in general. But for whatever reasons, Brian Williams chose to identify the suit of Swords with guns. Now I realize that swords could be seen, or definitely are weapons, but they can be other things as well, depending on how you identify swords, but he kind of like pigeonholes swords as weapons. And I think his choice of guns is most unfortunate. And I'll explain as we go further. In the Minchiate, he does seem to adhere to a more traditional Minchiate imagery. And I had commented in my Lost segment that as I was looking at the Minchiate, it occurred to me that it looks unfinished, and I don't know if that is because it was published in the same year he passed away. Maybe he wasn't able to finish it, or I don't know, but it just has I think the reason I initially was not attracted to it is because it just feels like it isn't done. It's just, and maybe you'll agree as you see more of the cards, but he does honor the tradition of Minchiate, and he sticks, pretty much with the imagery that we are familiar with in this deck. Now in the PoMo, and I was really liking the PoMo and feeling like, oh, this is a modern deck I could use, until I saw the suit of guns. Now, maybe 1999, there weren't, or this was created in 94. So maybe at that time it was pre-Columbine, I don't know. But I just feel, and I think I would have felt this way in 1994 anyway, that when people come to you, a lot of times it's because they have, they have a need for guidance, and you just don't know what someone is going through or feeling. And we do, I'll get back to that thought. Here we have a little bit of imagery on the Renaissance cards, which we don't typically see in the, cards of that period of time. But you never know what someone is going through or thinking. And for them to come to you for a reading and see images of guns pointing to someone, or at themselves or whatever, you just don't know. And I'm not intending this pun, but you just don't know what that'll trigger, and you just don't know who you're dealing with. And boy, I just wouldn't want to be the catalyst, for someone to see an image like this and figure that's the answer. That would be most unfortunate. And so for that reason, I'll never use it, unfortunately, for the suit of guns, I'll never use it. But otherwise, it's an interesting deck. I'm not sure if this part was, and here we have a very famous scene from, was that David or Ingres? I'm not sure. The famous painting of Liberty. I noticed in the PoMo, a postmodern, right, postmodern deck, that it is a reference to postmodern art, and there are many images from the art world, and this being among them. The cardstock on each. The Renaissance is the slickest. It seems to have a laminate. It's very flexible. This is also very flexible, considering how large it is. The cardstock is pretty thin, I guess. Let me see, what number are we on? 5? This is 4. None of the cardstock is to write home about. So for the 5 of Swords of the Renaissance deck, we have 4 individuals and 5 swords. A little Picasso, a little Picasso-esque. And I don't think the commentary I'm about to make on the Renaissance was in yesterday's video, but I, do remember from reading his book on this deck that the corners he utilized to make mythological references. So if you're attracted or you want to learn more about mythology, I think his book, A Renaissance Tarot, is a good place to look. but it's, you know, his associations. You might not necessarily have the same mythological associations with the cards that Brian Williams had, so just keep that in mind. He also had a different idea for designating the suits to the elemental dignities. So, but it's valid, of course, you know. However you associate the suits is valid. Ooh, we've seen that image before. Reference to Goya. And the scream. Now, I'm not sure, because this is a secondhand deck. I purchased it used. These two I purchased brand new, unopened, although from the original printings. But this one I got in the order they sent it, and I think probably the girl is the page and the boy is the knight. There's nothing in the PoMo suit for the knights to indicate they're the knights, except that they're boys. So I'm going to go on the assumption that the girls are the pages in the PoMo. I could be wrong, but I think you just pick one that you think it is and stick with it. Yeah, like, I don't know. I think it's most unfortunate that the guns were used to identify the suit of swords. It may appeal to some, but not I or me. And remember, in the Minchiate, horses, you know, that there was some type of minotaur or, you know, some kind of creature combined with man that was used for the knight. So it wasn't like a horse per se in any of the Minchiates. It's just a little Rodin, the thinker. Now, see what I'm saying? You know, like somebody contemplating suicide. If somebody's despairing and they see this image, you know, what would they walk away, you know, especially if, you know, sometimes, you know, people just, you know, they have a healthy attitude and they get a card reading and they listen to what the cards say, but they ultimately will make their own decision. The cards might help them, you know, facilitate a new perspective or a way to think. But, you know, if someone's coming to you and they're really distraught and you don't know, you know, people go through stuff that they don't publicize, and they see something like this, I think it can be most unfortunate and damaging. The aces. Oh, somehow, what did I do? I screwed up. Oh my goodness. So I must have got ahead with talking. So here are the women, the queens rather. I guess I got ahead of myself a little bit. But here we go. Here are the kings of the Renaissance in Minchiate. And we saw the king here, the one I was talking about. Here's the queen. Ooh, yeah, see what I'm saying? Here's the queen, you know. A marriage isn't working out and the wife comes to you and like this is what she sees. You just don't know. Oh, I don't know. The most unfortunate. Okay, now we're on to the batons or the staves. We have a more or less, you know, readily identifiable image of the Ace of Batons. And Brian Williams chose television sets for his suit of staves. Which I probably would have if I was to use TVs to identify a suit. For me, it would be to identify the suit of swords, but he recognized the elemental dignities in a different way. So his way is valid for him, of course. A little bit of Christina's World by Andrew Wyeth here. So the PoMo, I want to love it, because, my background is art. And my attraction to the cards initially was art. I'm very, I'm well read in art history, and deeply attracted to artwork. A little Dali here. So I really want to love this deck and want to use it, but most unfortunate about the suit of swords being represented by guns. I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but we've got another little bit of Picasso going on here. So you see in all the suits, if you saw yesterday's video, and in these two suits, you see that although it's a Renaissance deck, Williams did opt to put in little little scenes, and also little things in the corners. Yeah, mostly the mythological references in the corners of this deck were in the trump cards, but there are little embellishments in each of those corners. Here we have, that Marcel Duchamp descending the staircase going on with the 6 TVs. So do you see what I'm saying about the Minchiate? I think it looks unfinished. I think maybe he didn't have time to, unfortunately he passed away. So perhaps it was published in the state it was in at his passing, or maybe he was just not well enough, to finish. Oh, what's this? Oh gosh, the artist's name escapes me. It's got an EA in the center of the name, like a pronunciation like Reagan, but what was his name? Can't think of it. I'll think of it the second I finish the video. You see, these more or less just look like line drawings at this stage, where, I think, probably he would have added color, is my opinion. Because these other decks definitely look finished. A little De Chirico. Reference, rather. And again, I think it's the girl. So, well, you seem to like Picasso. So my initial reaction to this Minchiate was that I just didn't like it. But, you know, certainly in lieu of the fact that the poor guy passed away and maybe it's an unfinished deck, cut the guy some slack, you know. And for those reasons, I could probably use this deck, you know, in honor, in tribute to him. I bought my grandbabies. For those of you who follow me and are familiar with some of my stories, I've purchased each of my granddaughters a treasure chest that I've been filling with tarot decks so that, you know, someday they'll have a bunch of tarot decks just for themselves. And I bought each of them, a Tarot of the Renaissance, plus myself. So we all three have that one deck in common. Little Whistler's mother here. Definitely a nod to Marguerite. And here are the backs. The Renaissance, the PoMo, and the Minchiate. So I'm sorry about the glitch from yesterday. I hope that those of you who saw yesterday's video came back to watch this one. So I do apologize. I can't explain what happened. I have no idea. But I felt I owed it to you to show you the deck in the 3 decks in their entirety. Look at this. All 3 of them have about exactly the same thickness because they all, maybe this one's a little thicker, but they all seem to be comparable. Until next time, friends, peace and stay well.